Today, we're covering a deeply disturbing and tragic case that has sparked widespread outrage across the nation. This is the story of 6-year-old Corey Micciolo, who was killed by the very person who should have been protecting him, his father, Christopher Gregor. The story of Corey's death and the shocking abuse he endured has drawn attention not only to the heinous acts of one man, but to the larger issues within the child protection system. To understand the tragic events that led to Corey's death, we first have to go back to April 2021. Corey was rushed to the hospital after showing signs of severe distress, slurred speech, stumbling, nausea, and shortness of breath. What followed would reveal a horrifying truth. At the hospital, Corey told doctors that his father, Christopher Gregor, had been forcing him to run on a treadmill at high speeds because he was too fat. But Corey wasn't the first to be injured by the treadmill. In the weeks leading up to Corey's death, surveillance footage from Gregor's apartment gym was uncovered. The video showed Corey running on the treadmill, but at a pace far beyond what would be considered safe or reasonable for a 6-year-old. His father continuously increased the treadmill speed, forcing Corey to run harder and faster. Each time Corey fell off the treadmill, Gregor would increase the speed again, putting him in even more danger. At least 6 times Corey fell and struggled to get back up, but Gregor did nothing to stop it. This was not an accident. This was deliberate, cruel abuse. Initially, Christopher Gregor faced charges for child endangerment, but as the case unfolded, more serious charges were brought against him. The New Jersey prosecutors initially didn't consider murder as a possibility, but after a revised autopsy report, it became clear that Corey's death was not an accident. The medical examiner concluded that the cause of death was blunt force trauma with lacerations to Corey's heart and liver. The injuries were consistent with the kind of physical abuse that would come from being forced to run on a treadmill at high speeds. As a result, the charges were upgraded to murder. But despite the gravity of these charges, after a 4-week trial, the jury found Gregor guilty of aggravated manslaughter and child endangerment, but not first-degree murder. The verdict was a significant step toward justice, but it was still not the harshest punishment Gregor could have faced. One of the most pivotal aspects of the trial was the testimony from expert witnesses. Dr. Thomas Andrew, the former chief medical examiner for New Hampshire, helped revise the autopsy report, explaining that the cause of death was blunt force trauma. He testified that Corey's injuries were consistent with repeated falls from a high-speed treadmill, which would have put severe stress on his body.
I superficially mean they looked, I called them fresh because you could see that they hadn't formed a scab.
Do you have an opinion after you reviewed all of this material in regard to the decedent's cause of death?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors what that opinion is?
But
the defense called Dr. Michael Baden, the former chief medical examiner for New York City, to testify that pneumonia or an infection might have been the actual cause of death. He argued that the autopsy didn't conclusively prove that the treadmill incidents were the cause of Corey's death. However, the prosecution countered with another expert, a specialist in infectious diseases, who testified that there were no signs of pneumonia, further weakening the defense's argument. One of the most tragic aspects of this case is the failure of the child protection system. Corey's mother, Micciolo, had repeatedly tried to alert authorities about the abuse. In fact, she reported suspicions of abuse to New Jersey's Division of Child Protection and Permanency more than 100 times over the course of 18 months. Yet no action was taken to investigate or protect Corey. Micciolo has publicly spoken about her frustration, saying, "I don't know if it was incompetence on the DCP&P side, or they just didn't believe me. The fact that no steps were taken to protect Corey despite his mother's repeated warnings speaks to the serious flaws in the Child Protective Services system." The defense in this case didn't dispute the shocking nature of the treadmill video. They acknowledged how horrifying it was, but they argued that the evidence didn't prove that the abuse on the treadmill caused Corey's death. "When you see that video, you are going to be horrified. You're going to be mortified," said the defense attorney. But they insisted that Corey's death was not related to those falls. The defense even attempted to discredit some of the more disturbing elements of the case. One example was a moment in the surveillance video where it appeared that Gregor bit Corey on the head. While the video suggested this, the defense argued that there was no physical evidence to support it. However, the video, along with Corey's own statements about the abuse, painted a clearer picture of the father's cruelty. Outside the courtroom, Gregor's attorney, Mario Gallucci, expressed that his client intended to appeal the verdict, calling the conviction just the first step in a long battle. But for Corey's mother and the prosecutors, the guilty verdict brought some measure of justice, though it will never bring her son back. Corey's death and the subsequent trial have sparked national conversations about both child abuse and the failures of child protective services. Christopher Gregor's sentencing is scheduled for August 2nd, 2024, and he faces up to 30 years in prison. While that may seem like a significant punishment, many feel it doesn't fully measure up to the horror of what Corey endured. Ultimately, justice for Corey goes beyond the verdict in this case. It's about ensuring that no child ever suffers in silence again. This case is a painful reminder of how important it is to protect children and listen when they speak up. We must not let tragedies like this one go unnoticed. It's not just about punishing the perpetrator. It's about creating a system that actually works to keep children safe. If this case has left you questioning the effectiveness of child protection systems or feeling the need for change, make sure to leave a comment down below. Let's keep this conversation going and share your thoughts on what can be done to prevent tragedies like this from happening in the future. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another important update. See you next time.